Hey guys, as said, I'm going to talk about the FCE exam 2020, so the First for Schools test that you will have in April. I noticed that some of you had some issues with it, and that is why I'm trying to make this video, and hopefully it will make it a little bit more clear. So what is important? The first thing that is important, I'm going to talk about the reading and the use of English part right now. So not the listening, not the writing, not the speaking. For now, just reading and the use of English. There were a few things that were important. You have 7 parts in the tests, and I'm going through every single one of them and explain how you can try to start with those kind of exercises. That's the aim of this video. So 7 parts, and we'll go through them later on. What is important for you to know? So reading and the use of English. Some basic tips is first, skim the text. If you have texts, read the text. Read the instructions and mark the keywords. What is important? What is their question? What do you need to answer? And then find the meaning of new vocabulary in the text. If you have a text and there are words that are difficult to understand and you don't know the words, try to read the sentence, try to understand what it is about, and try to figure out what it could mean. Also, it is important to organize your time. You only have 1 hour and 15 to 20 minutes, so make sure you have enough time to cover all the things you need to do. And then at the end, make sure that all your answers are on the answer sheet. But I think you should know this by now. So these are just the tips in general. What I want to do next is a basic idea of what will help you the most if you're going to take this test is you should study your collocations, phrasal verbs, linking words, prepositions, and the difference between adjectives, nouns, adverbs, and verbs. Those things or those topics will help you the most. That is the main idea. Now let's start with the start. So part 1 is about a gap fill exercise. You have a multiple choice below or on the next page, and you have to choose between A, B, C, or D, and you have to fill it in the gaps that are left for you in the text. I'm going to try to explain how I did this exercise or what you can pay attention to do those things. And then I hope it will be easier for you to also follow that technique. So the first one, the 0-1, is always filled in because they're going to show you how to do it. So the 0-1 is always filled in. The next sentence says, in common with many other British teenagers, he chose to take a year out before to study for his degree. So that is a sentence. You can see that you have 4 phrasal verbs and they have a completely different meaning. Settling down, getting up, taking over, or holding back. So what is easy to do is try to understand what all of these mean and which meaning would fit the sentence best. So if you think about it, holding back, so D. Holding back means that you're not showing something. He chose to take a year out before holding back to study for his degree. Not showing anything. So holding back a secret or holding back something that you know. So this doesn't really fit this sentence. C, taking over. To take over is to take control. So would that fit in the text? He chose to take a year out before taking over to study. So another thing that might help is try to read it out loud because sometimes you'll know that it doesn't sound great and it's probably not right. So taking over is also not right. Taking over means to take control of a situation or something. This is not what that means. Then we have B, getting up. So getting up literally means waking up in the morning and getting up to prepare for your day. He chose to take a year out before getting up to study for his degree. He did not have to take out a year to do that. He did not go on a gap year and then focus on studying. The meaning doesn't really make sense. Then let's take a look at settling down. So he chose to take a year out before settling down to study for his degree. Settling down means that you're going to stay in a certain area to focus on something. So settling down means to stay somewhere for a longer period of time. That would make sense in this sentence because you're talking about first he went on a gap year, so he went away, went traveling, and then after that he stayed somewhere to focus on his studying. So that would make sense, and that is also the answer to this question. Let's take a look at the second one. So after doing various jobs to some money, there are 4 verbs that you can fill in. The first thing that you can do is try to read out the 4 words in a sentence, see if it fits. Various jobs to achieve some money, to raise some money, to advance some money, or to win some money. So they're talking about jobs. If you're talking about a job, you do not win money. You do not do a job to win money. So win you can already eliminate, it's out. Advance is also not used in this context. So that leaves us with achieve and raise. You know that you can raise money, so you can, for instance, for a charity event or something. But can you achieve money? Achieve money is not a word. As in the meaning is close together, but you do not achieve money. You achieve goals or you achieve success. You have something else, but never money. That is not a word used with money. So that leaves us with to raise money. And as I've shown you already, the third one is greater. So let's see. The more adventurous the young person, the greater the challenge. So a good idea is these are fixed collocations. They're called collocations, as I've said in the slide before. And just that's the only word that fits with challenges. You do not have stronger challenges. You do not have wider challenges or deeper challenges. You have heard about greater challenges. So try to imagine what you have heard before in a conversation or what you have read before. The thing that makes the most sense is probably the right one, because this has a lot to do with a feeling. Sometimes you use certain words and you don't know the reason why, but it's just because people have certain phrases that they use. This is one of these things. You only have greater challenges. 4 is also to do with collocations and challenges. So the sentence is, the challenge they are likely to put, set, aim, or place themselves for the gap year. So they have a challenge. The question is, what word, what preposition, or what other word do we use for that? Do you put a challenge? Do you set a challenge? Do you aim a challenge, or do you place challenge? So try to look back at the sentence that is there before. Do you put a challenge? Have you ever heard that before? Do you set a challenge? Do you aim a challenge, or do you place a challenge? In that sense, you do not place a challenge. I've never heard that before. And you do not put a challenge. Set a challenge or aim a challenge. You aim for goals, but you do not aim for a challenge. You do set a challenge. So set is the correct one in this sense. Sometimes you just have to study them. That's the bad part about this. Let's go to the last exercise or the last example that I want to give you. It can in a thirst for adventure. The first one is result. You have lead, you have cause, and you have create. So there are 4 options, and they kind of have the same meaning, but they kind of do not have the same meaning. Another good idea for trying to answer these type of questions is take a look at the prepositions or the other words in a sentence. You can see that after the gap here, so you have your gap, you see the preposition in. And In is not generally used with all. And then the last one, what is important to do as well is if you're reading a sentence, take a look at the prepositions or the other words that you find in the sentence. In this case, you can see the preposition in. A good idea is to check if the words below that you can fill in can go with this preposition. Result in, lead in, cause in, create in. If you think about it, create in, cause in, they don't sound right. Cause and create do not take a preposition after it. Lead does take a preposition, but the preposition that you would use in a lead would probably be lead to. Something leads to, and not in. That leaves us to, or leaves us with result. So, let's take a look. It can result in a thirst for adventure. So result in does make sense, and that is the reason why result is the correct answer. So check your prepositions and see if that works. So, a good idea is to come up with some tips. So you have your first exercise, some tips. Read the sentence completely, understand what it means. What could this sentence mean if I fill in this word? The second tip, think of the collocations and phrasal verbs of the words listed below. So if you have the words, what other collocations or phrasal verbs can you come up with? If you have result, result in, result on, result of, result for, try to come up with other things that you think might fit. And then if you can see it in the sentence, that might mean that it's a possible correct answer. So that's the way you can do it as well. Tip number 3, look at the nouns, prepositions, verbs, and adverbs in the text. So the word that you need to fill in, would it be an adverb, would it be a verb, what is still missing, and what would it describe? So that's a way you can check if you would have to look for a specific type of word. Number 4, when you're not sure, eliminate what you know is wrong. As in, what we've done before is, you know that some things just don't exist, so just eliminate them from the first start on. And it's easier to choose from the 3 others or the 2 others. And then check if it sounds correct. So when you read out the sentence, you will notice, or most of you will notice, that something sounds off or it sounds okay. So that's always a good tip to follow as well. You had to prepare a close exercise before. And I'm going to show you the answers that we would have to have in there as well. This is just to show you what your answer should be in that exercise you did before. Remember that you can fill this in on this paper, but the most important part is that you fill it in on your answer sheet at the end. So this is the exercise that you've done before, and we have talked about part 1. Then let's go to part 2. So what you have to do is you have to come up with your own words. So you're going to read the text, and you have to choose a word that you think would fit in this situation. So the words are not given. You come up with them. You can see that in the first line, they're talking about, or they have already filled in since. They're talking about a time, so you know that since might be a good idea. Let's do the next ones. Well, I would say together, but it's mostly me at this point. Let's see. Ships traveling east brought the black pepper from the Spice Islands in Southeast Asia, but this a long time. So the first thing that you can do is you can see that this is a new sentence. This a long time. There is no verb in this sentence. A good idea is always to check what things am I missing. Do I have a subject? Do I have a verb? Do I have an object? What is missing? And in this case, you're missing a verb. A sentence cannot exist without a verb, so try to fill in what type of verb you would choose. The minute you know that it's a verb, I think it's easier to start. So let's see. In Southeast Asia, but this took a long time. So it took a while to get there. Then, in 1492, Christopher Columbus was asked to find a shorter route to the Spice Islands going westwards. then eastwards. So the first thing is, I've already filled it in, but you can tell that the word then is here. So check your words after the gap and before the gap, because they will tell you the most things. Then is mostly used when you're trying to, when you're comparing things. So one thing compared to the other. So something, then something. Westwards rather than eastwards. When you see then, think of comparison. Then you will come up with rather very fast as well. And so he set from Spain across the Atlantic Ocean. So this is important because this is an expression that you use. He is definitely on a boat or on a ship. So to set sail is just an expression that you need to know. But the set in here can already tell you what you would need for the rest of that. Then the next thing, Columbus didn't succeed finding the Spice Islands. So a good idea is you can tell, okay, there are verbs in here, succeed, didn't succeed, finding is in here. A good thing to think about is when you have a verb, you have to think if there is a possible phrasal verb. Do you need another preposition after the verb? Didn't succeed, and then, what do you think? Succeed in, succeed at, on, before. What would fit in this situation? So a good thing, again, is when you have a verb, try to think about what preposition belongs with that word. We succeed in finding the Spice Islands. So succeed in doing things. It's a fixed expression, or it's a collocation, or a, well, in this case, phrasal verb that is very important. So try to think of when you have a verb, is there a preposition that belongs with it? And with 13, it's something else. So find the Spice Islands, but he managed to discover the Americas. It seems like not really something is missing, but a good idea is to always see what is there. Okay, so we have subject, we have a verb. There is something, or the gap is before the verb. That could mean two things. You need some type of tense, so that has or do or didn't or do, or you need an adverb, because an adverb says something more about the verb. In this situation, what you can do is see if you can fill in any adverb. So for instance, but he quickly managed to discover. Manage is not changed. It is still manage. So when we use an adverb, our tense of our verb changes. So he quickly managed to discover. That is not what is there. So you already know that it's not going to be an adverb. What do you need? Another tip is go back to the front. Columbus didn't succeed, but he. So there is a comparison. So he didn't do this, but he did manage to discover. So you're going to try to find the comparison between those two. So he didn't succeed, but he did manage to discover. For 14, there he across another pepper. So you can see that there is a cross after the gap. You see there is a subject. What is missing? We do not have a verb. There he across another pepper. What verb would be useful to have with across? Across can only go with a few words. Try, he came across another pepper. It's in the past, so keep in mind the tenses. That's what I'm trying to say. Then, soon Columbus' discovery. You recognize soon is a linking word, but it's not finished. Soon what? Soon his discovery. There is something missing there. So the linking word is not finished. There is something going on. So what you can do is, you know that he left, and something of the discovery, large quantities of chilies were being shipped back soon after his discovery. So after his discovery, things started happening. Later, people realized that chilies would actually grow in Southern Europe, and it wasn't long before fresh chilies were sail in. You can see that there is a verb. You can see that there is a gap after the verb. Most of the time, that means that you need a preposition. Were sail. This is a fixed expression. Something is on sale. Something is on sale. Is or were, the same verb to be, and then the preposition on sale. So this is also an expression that you would need to study beforehand. So try to come up with those things. So again, some tips. Read the sentences out loud. You might fill in the gaps automatically. Second tip, read the sentence completely and understand what it means. Look at what might be missing. Do you have a verb? Do you have an article? Do you have a pronoun in your sentence? If they're not there, think about if it would fit. Then 4, look for words in the sentence that give a tip about what you need. If there is the word then there's probably a comparison. If there is a but, there is probably a cause and effect. Check if you need to complete the phrasal verb or the collocation. So, if you have a verb, maybe take a look if you need a preposition. So, to succeed, and then what preposition do you need? That is the main idea. These are some basic tips. So that for exercise 2. The example or the exercise that you had to do is also on here. I'll quickly go through them. So these would be the answers that you would need for the exercises that you did on Monday, I believe. So that's that for part 2 of the 7 parts of your Use English. And then the next part that we're going to talk about is part 3. So part 3 is all about trying to change the words that are written at the back and trying to change them so that they fit the gap. So for instance, let's start with the first one. So you see, National Bike Week was celebrated last week in a way with a family fun day in Larkside Park. So you can see that we have to change the word memory. Why did I choose memorable? So my way of thinking is, you can see an article, and an article most of the time is just in front of the noun. So a bridge, a plant, a student, anything, a thing, a person, an animal, or a place, so a noun. In this case, we already have a way. So way is the noun. We have an article, we have a noun. When we want to say something more about the noun, what we use is an adjective. So an adjective says something more about the noun. So we're going to change memory into an adjective. And the adjective of memory is memorable. So that's the way that I think it will be easiest for you to do this exercise. The same thing with 17. So you have you have your article, you have event, the event. So you have your noun, you have what seems to be part of a verb, but there is something missing still. The event proved to be highly successful. This is not a conjugated verb. This is not the verb, but this is not the main verb. This is an auxiliary verb. So try to look at what it might be. You have to change it into the main verb. Proved to be highly successful. Go to 18. Larkside Cycling Club brought along a variety of different bikes. So again, we can see an article. The article is a. Is there another noun in there? A of different. You cannot say a different, two different, a of, two of. So you still need a noun. So there is a noun missing. So we're trying to change this word into a noun. So very, how can you make that a noun? Try to put an article in front of it. A variation of different bikes or a variety of different bikes. Okay, let's go with the next. To demonstrate the family members of all ages can get. So we have enjoy. Let's see what the next thing is. So you have an article. The article is the. Then you have no noun. Seems like there is no noun in there. The what? What is it? So we do not have a noun. So let's see. How can we make enjoy into a noun? Adjective. What would the adjective of enjoy be? It is an enjoyable ride. So enjoyable would be adjective. What would the verb be? I enjoy reading books. So I enjoy reading books. So that is enjoy. That's a verb. How or what would the noun be of enjoy? The enjoyment that family members of all ages can get from group cycling. Again, basic cycling was taught using conventional bikes. So we can already see that basic cycling was taught. So something was taught. Cycling was taught, but we also need save. So cycling, something was taught. Cycling was taught. Let's see. How can we change save so that it fits this? So something must be taught. So you have something, so a thing, a person, a animal, or a place would be a noun. So we need to make this into a noun. Basic cycling safety was taught using conventional bikes. So we already have the verb, we already have this. We need something to be taught. Cycling safety was taught. Okay, there was also some rather bikes on display. There is a verb, rather. Rather mostly shows that something is not the same, as in you're going to compare a few things, or it's different from what you would think. So rather shows that there is something off or different. There were also some rather usual bikes on display. Rather usual seems a bit weird because rather shows that something is different and it's weird and it's not normal. So unusual bikes on display. So also changing this to make it negative is also a good way to take a look at these sentences. One-wheelers, five-wheelers, and even one which could carry up to 6 were used for fun. So we can have 6 of these things, though if we can have 6 and we can count them, they're probably objects. If it is a thing, an animal, a person, or a place, you know that we're looking for a noun. And we have the word ride. How can you turn ride into a noun? When we say the riders. So there were 6 riders, and they were used for fun. So that's the basic idea. Try to come up with what the word is that you're missing and try to change it into that specific form of the word. So a few tips. Think about the range of words that can be formed from that stem. So you have the stem at the back, so these words that you have to change, and try to think of the range of words. Okay, I know enjoy, enjoy, enjoyment, enjoyable, to enjoy. So try to come up with all the different forms and see which one would fit. Another example, to compete, competition, competitive, competitor, things like that. So try to first come up with all the different forms. Then check what is in front and behind the gap. It will give you a hint. So for instance, if there is an article, do you need a noun, or is there a verb, and do you need to say something more about the verb? Is it an adverb that you need? So try to look at what is just in front and just behind the gap. Look at what might be missing. So does it have a verb? Does it have an article? Does it have a pronoun? And the last, read the sentence completely and understand what it means. So do I need the opposite of the word that is given? So for instance, we had the one with usual. Usual didn't really seem to fit that gap, so you can try to see if it fits better if you make it the opposite. Then the exercise that we did, or you had to do for your homework the other day, is also here. So for that, I can also show you the answers that you should have. Then, for the next part, exercise or part 4. So this is a bit difficult to explain, or it's a bit difficult. It is more difficult in the sense that you need to fit in these words. But what is always a good idea is to check what verbs are used in here and if you can use those verbs to fill in this word. For instance, you know you have to use forward. Paula is really the band's new album. So what they want you to do is, this is the main idea. This is what you have to form. This is what you have to understand. And you need to rephrase this with this word to make this fit. So you need to have this idea with this word, and you have to fill it in here. So what you can do is, Paula is really the band's new album. So she can't wait. She is looking forward, and then check what verbs you have here to hear the band's new album. So that's what you can have as well. And then the next one is, buying a daily newspaper seems pointless to me, and you have to use point. You can tell that can't is a negation, so it's something that is not happening. I can't, point, and then always check what the verbs are. I can't, the point in buying a daily newspaper. I can't see the point in buying a daily newspaper, or buying. And then Daniel thought the flight would be more expensive than it actually was. So not. The flight, as Daniel thought it would be. You have to use negation here. The flight, and then, was not as expensive as Daniel thought it would be. So again, use this. Try to look at these things, negation, so not as expensive as Daniel. So you know that you have to do something with as well. So this is an example. Some tips that are important. Practice your paraphrasing. Say the same thing with different words. So try to practice in saying the same ideas but using different structures, using different vocab. The second, pay attention to any verb in the second sentence. So, yes, so if you have a verb in the second sentence, you can see that maybe it's about one person, or maybe it's about two people, or one subject, or multiple subjects. So it can show you if it's singular or a plural noun that you need. And then the last one, verbs used in the first sentence are often used in your answer. So as you can see here, Daniel thought the flight would be more expensive than it actually was. The flight was not as expensive as Daniel thought it would be. And here it was the same with buying, and the first one was about hearing as well. So keep in mind the verbs that you use in the first sentence as well. That for part 4. 3 more parts. Let's go. Okay. The next part that we're going to is, you also had to do an exercise about this. And I'm going to show you if it was okay or if it was not okay. So again, you had to fill in the word mind. So try to find mind and see what verb is in there. Mind, borrow. Would you mind would is a modal verb, and it can suggest that you have to use a conditional. So, would you mind if we borrow your letter? He pretended be frightened. So, I am not frightened, he said. He pretended to be is the main form, or it's to be. It's like the base form of the verb, and you have to keep it exactly that way. So, he pretended not to be frightened. The other ones you can see for yourselves. Then, the next part of your exercises. Almost forgot about that. You had to do a little bit more for me. Yeah, so these are the examples that you should have for yours. Let's go to part 5. So what you have to do for part 5 is you're going to have a small text and you're going to answer questions about it. So it's multiple choice. You need to find the answers in the text. So if you read this text, the question is, in the first paragraph, the writer is aware of. The possible answers that you will get will look very similar. There is always said something about it in the text, but you need to find which one is the most correct. In this case, I've already underlined where I found it. So for instance, they're saying, I'm one of those. I have dragged her around the room and slapped her on the arm. She wants me to headbutt her, so that means that he's getting like kicks and he's fighting. And then this person says, but fear not, this is all strictly pretend. So in this case, do you think in this first paragraph the writer is aware of? In this case, I saw that the writer is thinking about the need to reassure his readers. So as in, don't fear, this is not real, this is just pretend, this is imagination. This is not actual fight. This is because she is trying to show me how to fight on stage. Then the next one, imagine there's a tin can on my shoulder, she says. Now try to knock it off. Lower my head as instructed. You can read it. And the question is, how does the writer feel when Kate mentions the tin can? Worried about hurting, relieved that Kate is just pretending, concerned that it may injure his head. So his head. These are just small things. So concerned that it may injure his head. So he thinks in this situation that she is going to injure him. This is him trying to, so she has a tin can on her shoulder and he is hoping desperately that I do not miscalculate the angle and end up doing damage to her face. So keep in mind that these answers seem very similar to what you should answer, but in this case, he is worried about hurting Kate. There are a few things, a few tips that I can give you for this. First of all, read the text before you read the answers and read the question and think about the question before you check the possible answers. So read the question, think what you've read and see if you can find an answer, and only then read the possibilities that you can pick from. The second tip is read the questions carefully to have an idea what to look for. So you have the questions, go through them, as in, how does the writer feel when Kate mentions the tin can? So there will be questions that will try to make you answer the wrong thing. So read them carefully. And then read your question. It is not because the word is in the text that it is also the correct answer. They will try to trick you this way. So what that means is, here there is something said about a tin can, and maybe there would be an answer in here about the tin can. You need to remember that it's not because it has the answer in a certain option that that is the correct one. really check what the question is and really check if you have answered the question. Number 4, you will be asked to think about opinions and feelings of the characters, so the people involved in these texts. And the answers are not always literally in there. So you have to try to read between the lines. What is happening? What would they think? What would they go through? It's not always in there. It's not that literal. You need to understand it a bit better. That for this part 6, we're almost there. Remember what you had to do is you're going to have a text and you're going to have gaps in the text. And what you need to do is you need to try to fill in a sentence that they're given below, that I've given below, and see in which one it would fit. So for instance, if you think C, the sentence C would fit in between those sentences. That's what you have to do. For these types of questions, there are a few tips that I can give. The first one, number 37, I'm sorry, is going to be E. So I realize that seems ridiculous for something that's been so successful. So important to see is this person has been talking about a certain thing, and it says, it didn't take me long to come up with my design, only a day or two. So they're saying something positive. They're saying it didn't take me a long time, but I already had arrows and angles in my mind. So the but suggests that something else is coming. So they're comparing something. Something in here, 37, is going to be a sentence that will contrast with the sentence that comes after it, because this linking word is but. So it's a contrast. So something is going on, but something else is going on. So pay attention to what words are next to the gap or next to what you want to write. Yes, so that's the idea. So you're saying something and see what words would suggest a specific answer. So in this case, that would be E. The only thing I can tell you is pay attention to what the sentences say and see if there are any tips that other words give you. For instance, but if they're talking about a cause and an effect, about comparison, about contrasting two ideas, you know your linking words. Linking words are very important in this exercise. Then, some tips on how to deal with this. First of all, read the sentences after the gap. They are often very important. So, what they will do is when you have a gap, most of you just read up until that gap and try to find what would fit in there. But that's what they want you to do. So they're going to write something after that gap that may change your mind. So read the whole text, not just up until the gap, also what comes after. Another tip is look at the linking words. They can predict if you're talking about contrasting ideas, cause and effect, or they can show you if an example is needed. And 3, read your text. It's not because the word is in the sentence that it is also the correct answer. So for instance, if this whole paragraph is about kittens and there is a sentence with kittens in it, that doesn't mean that that is the correct answer. Try to read what would need to fit. They will try to trick you this way. Last but not least, part 7. So you're talking about a few different people. Person A, person B, person C, person D. And then you have to find, or you have to figure out which things or what things were mentioned in which text. So for instance, who talks about feeling satisfaction that her determination resulted in a better performance? Or who thinks that? And you have to try to match these ideas with the correct person or the correct section. Again, these things will come up multiple times. You need to find the correct one. So a few tips on how you can do that is, first of all, you will start scanning the text at the start. You think, I see satisfaction, I see determination, I see performance. Where can I see those words? That's important to do so, but keep in mind to read the whole text first and get the main idea, because it will help you to answer the normal question, the general question. And again, read your text. It's not because the word is in the text that it's also the correct answer. It's not because B talks about noodle soup and there is the word noodle soup in this one that it is necessarily connected. Try to find or try to read the text and see if you can actually find that ID in there. That's the main ID. So at the end, when you have finished your FCE test, remember that you have to fill all your answers in your answer sheet. We've done this in class, so I think you still remember. And then that leaves me with the explanation for FCE, and I hope it helps a little bit. Please, if you have questions, do ask me. I will send you another example for you to fill in if you want to. Always can send me an email if it's finished and you want me to check it. That's what I'm here for. So good luck, and that's all I can help you with, I think, for now.